Okay, so thank you everyone for coming to the forum. Uh, the goal of the forum was to answer any questions that folks have about the vote of no confidence resolution, any of the content of it. And I have some of my colleagues here with me. Vice President Bob Blazinski is here, and as well as Vice President Candace Jones, Dr. Laura Ramirez, and Dr. Cynthia Levo, among some others. And the reason, and Stephanie Fleming, because they were part of the negotiations with the Faculty Association about the terms and conditions of returning on the 24th of January. So if any questions come up around any of that, they're here to help answer that. Since I was not part of negotiations, which is standard, there's usually an official negotiator on behalf of the FAA, on behalf of the district, and those are the individuals who lead those conversations. So I think the best way for me to start is, does anybody have any questions they want to ask now? You can put them in the chat or you can raise your hands and I'm happy to answer them. We didn't get any email to us, so the floor is open in case folks have questions. I'm looking around to see if I see any hands or any chats. Okay, not seeing any. So basically, I'll just start out by saying I really hope that the full-time faculty vote against this vote of no confidence. I don't think it's warranted. Part of the reason I don't think it's warranted is that it came through the Academic Senate and it pertains to working conditions and not to 10+1 items. I know that 10+1 items 1, 5, and 6 are mentioned in the resolution, and those items within 10+1 do not pertain in this case. So that's one primary reason that I think the vote of no confidence should be voted down, is that it's really about working conditions and not about academic and professional matters. The authors of the resolution talked about curriculum, including establishing prerequisites and placing courses within the discipline. And the fact is that that's not really the same as modality. Faculty are primarily responsible for creating classes, doing the distance education piece, doing the pedagogical parts of it. But in terms of how we schedule classes, that's not part of 10+1. Also, standards or policies regarding student preparation and success. That is, again, that's not really, the notation there was about 2,500 students who may have signed a change.org petition. That standards or policies, again, that doesn't apply in this situation. That applies to grading and other policies related to student success, not to a situational part of it. And then the last part is district and college governance structure as related to faculty roles. And again, a lot of what was discussed, a lot of what was negotiated was done so through the Faculty Association, which is the entity that negotiates working conditions. And so, and I know that there was a number, 80% of the faculty polled by the Faculty Association. I think at one point, that number, the 80% was the 80% of people who responded, which was about a quarter of the faculty who teach at our college. So it's not really 80%, it's 80% of the people who responded. But I don't really want to quibble over the numbers. What I'm more interested in saying is I understand that coming back to teach face-to-face was a difficult transition. You can ask anybody for the last 2 years, I've said to folks when they've said how hard has it been to have folks transition to being online? And my response was, it was easier than it will be to bring them back, because it's a hard change. It's a really difficult transition. And so I think from where I sit, I know that it was going to be hard, and I know there was never going to be a perfect time or that there would be 100% agreement. So let's see, can you define collegiality and how you feel you have empowered the other administrative staff to embody those traits? Well, I think collegiality is really about what I'm doing right now. It's about having conversation. It's about having dialogue, similar to on Monday, January 24th, when the Academic Senate President, Dr. Gina Lopez, asked me if I would be willing to come to the Senate and talk about the return to campus and talk about the difficulties that happened over that weekend and that earlier in the day related to testing. And I said yes, and came to the Academic Senate, talked about the snafus we had, talked about the approaches we took to resolving those challenges. And also I apologized for the inconvenience. I know it was a very bumpy start. And this was our first foray into massive testing in a single weekend. And we were hoping, we had worked with our vendor, and unfortunately our vendor was overwhelmed, but we worked with the vendor, we helped out. And so it's a long way of saying, I think collegiality is about being willing to engage in the conversation and try to reach some sort of consensus, knowing full well that that's sometimes more difficult than not. And so again, I did, when asked, I came to the Academic Senate and talked about what was happening. And I believe my team has continued, especially at that time, to engage in the process, to be willing to meet with the FA whenever possible. We have a Council on Academic and Professional Matters, which is my executive team with the Senate executive team, and we talk about issues as they come up in that monthly meeting. I think a lack of collegiality would be, no, this is what I've decided. I'm not willing to talk to you about it. I'm not willing to explain myself. I'm happy to explain myself. In terms of helping the team be collegial, I think, first of all, it was a very stressful time. And I think there was a lot of different things swirling about. How do we get students into classrooms? How do we help faculty come back? How do we do all of these things? So we learned a lot in the process. We learned where we probably could have given more direction to our deans in terms of how to help manage getting students and faculty where they need to be. And I think we tried to refine our communication strategies, all of us. It's not, and I'm not just looking to the deans, because I think we all were refining our communication strategies. Not always perfect, but we try. And when we make a mistake, we try to fix that mistake. And I think it's hard because we did put deans in a difficult position. We said to them, you've got to go walk the halls and see who's here. Not because we were trying to do gotcha, but because we had students to serve, and we needed to know if students were being served, and we needed to make sure that what was supposed to be happening was happening. And so, it was a very difficult time for everyone. And, I'd like to go back to so in March of 2020, when we had everybody leave and go home, stay at home order, we thought we'd just be gone a couple weeks. I think we all thought, well, we'll be back after spring break in the middle of April. And then that didn't happen. And then it was really unclear, well, when are we going to come back? And what happened was, our facilities and police officers were here the entire time. But classified administrators, faculty, everybody was gone. Well, part of what happened was the mail started to pile up and bills weren't getting paid. So we had a lot of paper-based processes. So in May of 2020, I asked that classified staff and administrators come back 1 day a week to try to figure out where, let's make sure the bills get paid. Let's make sure we open up mail. The mailroom had run out of places to put mail. That was really a tense time for the individuals coming back once a week. It was tough because, so much was still unknown, but we still had processes that needed to take place. So we came up with work schedules to spread those folks out. We had masking, we put up plexiglass, we did all these kinds of things. Then in May of 2021, as it looked like we were going to start to really come back, 3 days a week for classified staff managers. And that was really challenging. Folks were still like, I don't know. And that's understandable. Transitions are hard, especially in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic in our lifetimes. And so there was, some bumps along the way, but everybody came back. And then as things headed in the right direction, we looked at July 6th, 2021 as when all of our classified staff, administrative staff, and non-instructional faculty would come back to campus. And again, tough. I kind of likened this whole process to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, because it's a tough transition and there's a lot of, a lot of frustration, a lot of I don't feel comfortable or denial, like, oh, what's going to happen? But as a leader of the college, I had to keep us moving forward. And so I think it was tough all along the way. None of these decisions have been easy. I want to make sure everyone knows that. But the most important thing was that it was what our students needed. And I had students come to my office hours throughout the fall and say, please, please, please have face-to-face classes in spring. I really want to be in face-to-face classes. We did a survey. Students said they wanted to be in face-to-face classes. Our student government kept telling us they wanted to be in face-to-face classes. They registered for face-to-face classes. And so the indication was that students really wanted to be face-to-face. And so that's why that was my guiding principle. And I want to make sure everyone knows that, every day throughout this process, especially in January, as we were trying to figure this all out, there was, a daily gut check on my part, because if as a leader, you have to be really clear about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I just kept asking myself, what do the students need? Is this about the students? Or is this about something else? And what I kept coming back to is this is about the students. And again, I understand that transitions are hard, but I also feel like we did everything in our power to make this the safest environment possible. We went above and beyond what any other Southern California institution did in terms of vaccination requirement, masking requirement, HEPA air filters in every office and classroom, having our face-to-face classes at 50% capacity, all of the things that we put in place, which we did in very close collaboration and coordination with Pasadena Public Health. It felt like we were making the right decisions because we were doing it safely, and we had the required testing. And the fact is that the data has demonstrated that we came back in a safe way and kept people protected. We have not had COVID outbreaks. We have gradually gone down in terms of our positivity rate. And so I think it was, I think that the facts or the data demonstrates that we did the right thing. So a request to elaborate on gut check. Well, it's not a gut check when it comes to health and safety guidelines, because we followed those. We we exceeded the health and safety guidelines. And so the gut check was more about reviewing in my mind whether or not, what was the primary reason we were doing this. And in my mind, it was about students and it was about student success. The health and safety guidelines were very clear. We exceeded the health and safety guidelines of any institution in Southern California. In fact, when Mayor Gordo did his State of the City address here on our campus in late February, the head of Pasadena Public Health, Dr. Go, sought me out to say thank you for all of the work that we did, for how we were an example of how an institution could come back safely, and all of the steps that we took, as well as our partnership with the city. And so that's in terms of the guidelines, I think we did what we needed to do. Other questions? Yes. Okay, it appeared that every step of the way the FAA negotiated vaccinations, this was not put in place by the administration without a fight. You know, I'm going to defer to Bob Lazinski, because he was the one who was interacting with the FAA on this.
Well, good morning, everyone. You know, I wouldn't classify that part of the discussion as a fight. As a matter of fact, we credit the Faculty Association for actually mandating the vaccination request that actually came from your faculty. There was no pushback from the district on that, as far as we really didn't think we would be able to mandate that the other way. So when the faculty brought it to our attention, the board had already kind of given us direction to say we would like this to happen. We didn't think it was going to be a top-down approach by any stretch of the imagination. So when the Faculty Association brought up the mandatory vaccination piece, we actually ran with that because that was where we wanted to end up in the first place, but we didn't think we'd have success. And we've had many community colleges since that say, how did you possibly do that across campus so easily? And it was because it came from the faculty. As far as the testing went, we've offered testing before it was required, and we already had it. So there was never any opposition to testing. It was just going to be how often, and if we were going to mandate it or not mandate it, or who had to participate. But I think those were fairly easy conversations. I mean, was there conversations about the 50%? Yeah, those were, and that wasn't a problem, as we've had this for quite some time. So our last negotiation session primarily surrounded returning to work. We'd already implemented the 50% class load 2 MOUs before this one. So that wasn't so much of that wasn't an argument. So I wouldn't characterize those particular topics, Elizabeth, that you had pointed out in your question, as being difficult conversations. We had the money to do it. It was just, how were we going to do it with the massive amounts of folks that we had to do it with? You know, how are we going to do a vaccination program for 15,000 people? You know, we've never done that before, never been trained to do that. So it's kind of like, how are we going to implement those ideas? That was the biggest challenge. But I would not characterize the vaccine testing and 50% classes as being difficult. It was, those were just good, solid principles to follow up on. That would be my interpretation of it.
A question has come in about why I didn't schedule this for the college hour. And that is because we started planning 2 months ago. Today at 11:30, we have our superintendents and principals luncheon with all 8 of our school districts. So right after this forum, I will be going over to Creveling so that I can greet all of our superintendents and principals from our feeder high schools. And we will be doing a luncheon and a program for them. So I want to make sure everyone understands it wasn't that the timing was really, it would have been great if it could have been at noon, But unfortunately it couldn't. And as far as having it tomorrow, there was no opportunity to have it tomorrow, and the voting starts tomorrow. So that's why it is today. Let me also, there was a question about, let me see, and I mean, let's see, a question about COVID outbreaks, and I'm not sure what's being referred to. How does that relate to the fact that the campus community wasn't notified about outbreaks during fall 2021? I'm not sure. I don't think we had any outbreaks in 2021. Candace, can you speak to that?
There are very specific guidelines in terms of what the city of Pasadena. So we work very closely with Dr. Go and the team that is managing the city's protocols related to COVID, and have done several walks with them. They've walked our procedures. But to the question, there are very specific guidelines as to what defines an outbreak and the connectedness between outbreaks and the connectedness between people. And so in fall of 2021, there was what we reported to the city, what we believed to be a connected activity that had higher than 3 persons impacted. That was right in December, and it was with one of our divisional offices, our department offices. And so we worked with the city. At that time, fortunately, we were sort of transitioning into the holiday break, and so that there wasn't a great need for the college to have to then go out beyond that department, because that department was put in isolation, or the persons that were impacted were placed into isolation, communicated with, and then we went right into the holiday break. And so that is the only that we would officially sort of classify, or actually say the city of Pasadena would officially classify as that. And then we worked with the city related to those communications to those employees and any impacted folks who had come in contact with those individuals.
And I was also asked about, what about the fact that our spring enrollments in face-to-face classes were low. It's true they were low, a couple of reasons. First is we were at 50% capacity, and we stayed at 50% capacity even because last summer we learned, we opened up the capacity and then the Delta variant came, and it was impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. But so when it came to our spring enrollments, our face-to-face classes stayed at 50% capacity. We did have over 11,000 students enroll in face-to-face classes. And so I believe that that's an indication that students wanted to be here face-to-face. They came, they stayed enrolled, they engaged in the testing protocol. And I think, I've been asked a lot about enrollments in general, and the fact that enrollments are down across the state, and what does this all mean? And, how are we going to, shouldn't we just do more and more things online? And the fact is this is a transition, and I don't think we're going to know for the next year or so. So through summer, fall, and spring, what our enrollment really is going to be, because transitions, as I said at the beginning, transitions are hard. And there are lots of variables that go into students signing up for face-to-face classes. One is, in some cases, they may not have felt comfortable, so they took online classes. In some cases, it might have worked better that they took a different mix. So where they might have taken all face-to-face classes in the past, now they were taking some face-to-face classes and some online. And another variable that came about was the reality that employers are desperate for workers. And so there are some pretty high salaries out there, even in fast food restaurants. And some of the students that we interacted with said, well, I could take more classes, but oh my gosh, I'm getting $20 an hour where I'm working. And, you know, we can't begrudge students who want to earn money. So I think that's a long way of saying that I just don't think that now is the time to create any sort of philosophy or set strategy on what our enrollment trends are going to be, because we're still very much in transition. And but we needed to have both options available, especially in the natural sciences and in CTE, in lab-based programs. So that was really important. Let's see. Student survey, were those results made public? That I don't know off the top of my head. That was a student survey that we did in the fall, and it was about, I can't remember off the top of my head. Alex, or is Crystal here? In terms, or maybe Dr. Ramirez could speak to the.
As far as a student survey, I don't know how public it went. But I know that Crystal's office, our research office, does have that data. We can send it out again.
Right. And then in terms of what are the numbers for online classes? Dr. Ramirez, could you address that?
Sure. Are we talking about now or for the coming summer? I can share our summer enrollment, our summer schedule. We have 541 online classes, 120 hybrid, and 571 in person. Our fill rates for online is about 66%, hybrid is about 40%, and in person is about 27%. So we do see those trends where students are choosing online classes. I think it's important that we kind of take a step and reflect on what we've done with online instruction, because our institution was not designed that way. So those are the numbers for summer.
So one thing, Dr. Brown, 11,000 is not a third of the student population, because we've dropped in enrollment down to closer to 20,000 because of the pandemic. So it's not a third anymore. And in terms of the student survey needing to go public, you know, we were, the survey numbers going public, that there wasn't a need for them to go public, or I think what we talked about, I think we made reference to them back in January when we were talking about how we decided how many classes were going to be face-to-face or going to be online, as it was when we started January 24th, and Dr. Ramirez can correct me if I'm wrong, about 58% of our classes were face-to-face. So 42% of our classes were online on January 24th and 58% were face-to-face. So we had already drastically reduced the number. We originally wanted to have at least 70% of our classes on face-to-face, and that number changed. So we tried to be nimble when it came to that. And let's see, see if there are other questions. I see Mark Whitworth's hand is up.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good. I'm really concerned with the lack of vision on this campus, and I'm really concerned with the lack of credence given to this vote of no confidence. I keep hearing it being passed off as it concerns working conditions, and I think you're missing the point here. The vote of no confidence does not concern working conditions. It concerns decision-making at the highest level at this college. And it's very concerning that it's trying to be dismissed as working conditions issues when there are no working conditions in our contract that would cover anything that has to do with COVID. This is all new ground to all of us. So the idea that it's working conditions, I for lack of a better phrase, I think it's absurd. I think it's a lack of decision-making that was made when we returned to campus. The other point I would like to make is that I would really like to know what this administration plans on doing to try to repair the campus climate. because I'm seeing nothing at all coming from the administration that's making anything better on this campus. So I would really like to know what your plan is to try to repair the relationship between the faculty and the administration.
Well, Mark, I think the first thing is by having this forum to talk about the vote of no confidence. And it's not that it's not being taken seriously, it's that I don't happen to disagree with the contents of the vote of no confidence. And I disagree with your perception that we have no vision and that we were poor at decision making, because the facts bore the decision out. We came back safely. We provided a safe environment. And I don't know how often you've been to campus, but we've had some really great activities here on campus. The campus is alive with students and we're here to serve them. And so I think it's a question of, in some ways, I feel like what you're asking me to do is agree with you that the vote of no confidence is warranted. And I'm telling you, I don't think it's warranted. I am here to address concerns. I'm here to talk about what my perception is. And as has been the case ever since the pandemic began, I am here to work with faculty. I have an open door. I had faculty office hours. I have them every single month. I had 2 people come. Sometimes people come, sometimes they don't. I have an open door policy. So I am absolutely open to ideas that you have. In terms of the general feeling on campus, I don't know if you were here last week. We did a wonderful celebration called the Above and Beyond Awards. And at that, we gave out 6 awards. We also did the RISR Awards, and we announced successful applications of 25 out of 49 applications for the Community Excellence Awards. So I feel like part of what we're trying to do is create a positive spirit here. We've had celebrations for various graduations. We did Festival Latinx this last weekend. But is it perfect? No, no institution is perfect. And I'm open to ideas. I would be interested in hearing your vision. And I did see a note about the fact that none of the Above and Beyond Awards went to faculty. That was a committee, and just so everyone knows, I was not involved in the committee that chose the successful Above and Beyond Award winners. I could have Alex tell you exactly who was on that committee and how those were decided upon. Alex, would you like to tell?
I'm happy to. It's going to take a second to research it, but I'll dig into that.
Okay. Let's see. Can you please clarify the role of, let's see, companies and colleges? So I'm sorry, Kirsten, I'm not sure I understand your question about companies and colleges and high school students.
Hi, yeah, thank you for pulling that out. It's just a comment that, I'm also taking classes at Cal State LA as a faculty member. I take classes there. And I just feel like, hearing from some of my colleagues on list boards, colleges, in other places, the pivots that they've been able to do seem to have been a little more creative. And this is just my feeling. My feeling on this campus is that many administrators see us as a must return to face-to-face campus, or that's the way we were built, which is a comment that VP Ramirez had just made. And what I'm feeling as a faculty member and what is coming our direction is, a freshman class that's spent the last 2 years online. And I see a lot of other colleges doing very creative, award ceremonies, very creative class imaginings, different ways of designing online hybrid face-to-face. There's just a lot of visionary stuff. They're doing a lot of certification and healing informed, trauma informed healing practices in the classroom, and a lot of that stuff. And I know we're doing a lot. I see my colleagues doing a lot, but I don't feel like that's at a visionary level. I still keep hearing this refrain of we've got to get back to, or the only way to have collegiality is face-to-face, or the only way to celebrate together is XYZ. And it doesn't seem to be embracing really visionary, big picture creative thinking. And that's my concern.
Okay, well, I will offer that for the last 2 years, we did a significant amount of celebrating online. And we did Zooms and we did all kinds of things. And so I think we have demonstrated that we can do that. I think we also have to counterbalance it with the fact that the Chancellor's office is giving a lot of money to institutions to build out face-to-face services, to build out basic needs centers, to build out all kinds of things. So what we have to do, and that's why I'm emphasizing the fact that we're in a transition, because you're right, high school students have been in an online learning situation. In some cases, not quite 2 years. Most schools went back after about a year, year and a half. So we are going to have a lot of students. I think the terminology out there is loss of learning. And that is they either didn't show up, or there wasn't a lot of, there were a lot of gaps in learning. And so you're right, we are going to need more in the way of trauma-informed and other teaching methodologies. And I do know that several entities on campus, including Dr. Carrie Bolin and her folks, have done some work in trauma-informed, have gone to conferences in trauma-informed approaches to teaching. And I absolutely agree that we need to think about the people who are going to be in the classroom. But our goal and our need right now is to make sure that we address what everybody needs. And, in the governor's initial proposal for this coming year, it says that he fully expects that a minimum of 50% of our classes will be face-to-face. And so I don't know if that's going to make it into the May revise 2 weeks from now, but just so you know, there is pressure on us to make sure that we have face-to-face classes, because some of our neediest students really want to be face-to-face and need that. It doesn't mean that we can't continue to innovate online. And, before the pandemic, I think maybe only 10% of our classes were online. And now we've got a lot more folks who are trained in online education, who are embracing it. And we're not turning away from it, but we do need to realize that we have students who need us in both ways. They need people who are face-to-face and people who are here online. And so I totally agree with that. And we need to figure out what that balance is. Again, I don't think we'll know for the next year, maybe year and a half, as we watch the pandemic and the impact play itself out. Dr. Brown asked about the $30 million, about, can I explain the focus is on innovation rather than funding existing programs? The reason for that is that the $30 million is, we invested it and we're drawing down $1.2 million to support programming on our college each year, innovation. The problem with funding existing programs is that the more that gets funded, the more existing programs get funded with these funds, the less that there's available for innovation and things and other types of ways to expand what we do for students and programs. So for example, one of the successful applications was equipment for developing a histology program. Well, that doesn't, if the biology program or if natural sciences, the existing programs need additional funds, we have a resource allocation process to go through to try to fund those needs. This is really, it's important that not every dollar of the money goes to an existing program, because in my experience, and I've been at 3 other districts here in California, once a program has gotten used to having foundation funding, it's very difficult for that foundation funding not to be there. And I think I didn't want to limit how expansive the use of the funds would be. So that's why it's focusing on innovation and not on funding existing programs. And, you know, Elizabeth, I understand I understand about hearing faculty and the fact that people have different situations in their home life. And it's a very tough place to be, because the problem is that it's a slippery slope. And so once we provide an exception for one individual because they have a particular situation, other individuals will come forward with other situations, and then our ability to maintain consistency and consistency among the faculty or among the folks who are being served and the people who are here working with our students will be very difficult. So I know everyone is challenged, and that's why we have to do the best we can to make sure that we keep people safe here at work. And that's part of vaccine mandates and all of the other health precautions that we put in place. Alex has found that the Above and Beyond committee was Trustee Sandra Chen Lau, Dr. Gina Lopez, Ernesto Partida, Emmanuel Lopez, our student body president, Olivia Liu, Director of International Studies, or Students, I'm sorry. One rep of constituency groups were selected by the presidents. Let's see, how will these innovative projects continue to be funded once the first-time grant expires? Well, in some cases, those grants paid for the equipment that was necessary to get the program started. So that's one piece of it. In some cases, it is about internships and developing out internships. And there are lots of ways that we can figure out going forward how to pay for internships, either through fundraising or through using our existing internship structure or through Perkins Strong Workforce. So there are lots of ways to address that. In some cases, it is, for example, building out DE so that the course exchange CVC OEI with Pasadena City College getting to join that group, that actually is already baked into the structure of our college because we have DE already. But this is going to help us meet the standards that will allow our classes to be on that statewide exchange. In some cases, just so you know, it is, in some cases, we are offering a second year of funding because we understand it's a 2-year project. But the goal is, with all of those projects, to institutionalize them. And I think there are ways to do that, but sometimes what you need is that opportunity to do proof of concept. It's that opportunity like, hey, if we had this equipment, if we, had these experiences for our students, if we did, whatever the case is, I think we will be able to institutionalize them. Let's see. Okay, Alex, I think was also going to respond to Dr. Brown's question about the Community Excellence Awards.
Yeah, thank you. I just put it in the chat there, just that we also had asked applicants to talk about how they saw funding continuing beyond the life of the grant, because those grants were just seen as a way to spur ideas and not serve as ongoing funding source, just to reiterate that.
The question about the trauma and healing centered approach being used for campus climate and not just individual classrooms, I don't have an answer to that, but I believe that that is part of the goal. And my hope for how we enter into the fall, again, this was a transitional semester and things are hard. And I think we did the best with the situation we had. And I believe a lot of great work will be done over the summer. I would encourage everyone to come to Professional Development Day And, but I will make a note of that specific question because I think it's a great one. It's not just about what happens in the classroom. It is about our general community. And we actually were having this conversation yesterday within the executive team about the need to figure out ways to create spaces for folks to express how they're feeling, you know, talk about grief because people have lost people in their family, talk about, you know, fears. And so that is absolutely part of this. And we want to be able to create space to allow that to happen. We did plant a tree as a place where people could go to really reflect upon what the last year has been. I know Alex is tracking down the monument that talks about what the tree is because we did order it. But you know, I totally get it. This has not been an easy time, and I think we do need an opportunity to heal and an opportunity, but we also need a safe space where people can articulate this is what I'm frustrated about, or why can't we do something? You know, that's one of the reasons I have office hours for each individual group, because that's the place hopefully I'll get to answer those kinds of questions. But maybe what we can do in the fall is I can host a monthly forum where we have these kinds of conversations and respond to questions, because it is important to hear what folks have to say. And it is important to, wherever possible, try to respond to how people are feeling about the environment.
Erica, just to point out too, Candace dropped some more information passed along from Dr. Golan in the chat as well. So there is more there.
Okay, and did that go to everyone? Let's see.
Yes, it did.
Okay, and I think Kirsten, I might have answered your question. We do have the tree. We could have a ceremony. We could have a campus-wide event or ceremony to talk about, to give people an opportunity to have a gathering to commemorate the loss over the last couple of years. I think that's a great idea. So we could absolutely do that. Maybe we could build that into our kind of welcome back activities in fall. Let's see. The role of division deans on this campus to be. Well, I think having been a division dean at Santa Barbara City College, I think the role is to work with the faculty and to work with the chairs and make sure that, you know, that resource requests are, wherever possible, are sent through the process, that any sorts of issues that come up in instruction, you know, what is it faculty feel they need to be effective in the classroom? What kind of training do they feel they need? If students, you know, are we offering classes in the right sequence? Are we offering a sufficient number? If we're not, are we seeing places where students can't get through the process? So I think it's really about fully understanding what the needs of all areas or all departments and disciplines are in that division and meeting those needs. That's, I think, my vision too, is that the division deans are unified in terms of systems approach to how things get done. And I think that's something the deans are working on with Dr. Ramirez. Let's see, the question about the non-instructional faculty, I'm going to pass that to Vice President Blazinski because I wasn't involved in those conversations.
Hi, I think there's in negotiations, I think nobody purposefully didn't address non-instructional faculty. I think that, you know, one size fits all is very difficult in negotiations because there are different types of employees within that bargaining unit. We have adjunct faculty that is a part of the bargaining unit. We have non-instructional faculty that have different working hours and working conditions than full-time faculty, due largely to how instruction is designed and non-instruction isn't. So there are obviously carve-outs for each of those types of areas that we have to consider when we're negotiating. So while a one-size-fits-all would make it easier for everybody at the table, I'm sure the FA would agree, there are these nuances that we have to talk about because there are different types of situations that different faculty find themselves in. So I don't think it was, it's just that's what we have to do to try to keep it as fair and equitable as we can across the board for all the groups that we have to negotiate with. And that's, I guess, the way I would answer that question. You know, and I don't think it was to anybody's fault, and I'm speaking for the union on this too as well. You know, we missed the boat the first time with non-instructional. We had to come back to the table because we didn't even consider it when we were so wrapped up in what we were trying to do on the safety measures. So I think we got there. I know that it was a rough road, but I don't think it was due to anybody's malice or ill intent. It was just trying to do what we thought was fair and equitable across the board.
And Danielle, in terms of your question about whether those decisions were supported by the PCC president, I can't speak on behalf of the union. The district negotiated what the union brought to the table, and it's not my place. It's not Vice President Blazinski's place to tell the union what to negotiate. So, you know, what I supported was the outcome of the negotiations as they were presented to me, but I wasn't involved in, I don't speak on behalf of what the non-instructional faculty may or may not have wanted the faculty association to negotiate on their part. That's not my place to weigh in. What I was presented with was an MOU that the faculty association negotiated. And so what that tells me is that the faculty association was supportive of what they had negotiated on your behalf. So it's not my place to weigh in on what the faculty association negotiated. And I do agree with the comment that trauma-informed leadership needs to be, I wouldn't say it needs to be from the top down rather than the bottom up. I prefer to say we all as a collective community need to embrace the principles of trauma-informed approaches, and we all need to utilize that. Because if I come and say that as the leader and say, you will do this, that's never going to be successful. So what I can say is I fully support it. I supported it when Dr. Bolin first brought it to my attention and said that this was a direction that she wanted to go in as part of her 3-year strategic plan. So I am absolutely on board. And when it comes to doing professional development, I'm as interested in doing it as, you know, I'm interested in it, and I hope everyone else is too. I think we all have to embrace it. It will never work if it's just top down. My field was social history, so I'm a big believer in, you know, history is about where the middle meets between what comes from the bottom up and what comes from the top down. It's that middle part that's really important, that's social history. So I completely agree with you on that. Let's see. Mention slippery slope. The test positivity rate at our campus was never 17%. Candace, that's correct, right? So I'm not sure, we were never at 17%.
No, we never exceeded, I think it was 6.92%. LA counties, yes. So LA counties was that high, but never PCCs.
Dr. Brown or Professor Brown, if I can accept that definition of top down in terms of putting policies and practices in place, which I completely support. But I also need folks to say that they embrace it too, because I want to make sure that it doesn't feel like an edict from me, because trauma-informed approaches to things is really about having people's hearts and minds embrace this approach. And so I hear you, and if you have a suggestion for how I could communicate that in a way that wouldn't make it look like it's a top-down edict, I'm absolutely open to that, because I absolutely am on board on this, and I want people to embrace it because that's where their heart is, not because they feel like they're being told to do it. So I'm open to your suggestion on that for how I could do that. Thank you, Mark, for clarifying that negotiations are two sides. Yes, we do have an equal role. You bring the needs of the faculty to the table and we respond. And president and other administrators, yes, Professor Brown, absolutely. President and other administrators. And then I will say, and faculty and staff. I think everybody needs to be on board, and policies and the push is really important. And that's what shared governance is about. So this is something that could come up in a host of committees across our campus. The Academic Senate could take it up, as well as Student Success Committee. We can talk about it in College Council. That would be a great place to have this dialogue. Absolutely open to it. Because I think Dr. Valdez's point is well taken. We don't want it siloed in a particular division. We want it to be campus-wide. How will the climate survey results be shared out and used? That I don't know. They will be shared out. They will absolutely be shared, but I don't know the format of that. Alex, or does anybody know? I don't know if Crystal has joined us.
I'm happy to find out and respond with a
Okay,
follow-up.
yes, because they will be. That's the point of having the climate survey. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, we have about 1 more minute. Can you please address, I'm sorry, Professor Supakar's question, which is, okay, given those dire circumstances, isn't it an equitable solution to give faculty members what they need? You know, I'm going to say that the short answer to that is no, because we required classified staff to be here, we required administrators to be here, and we had students who signed up to take face-to-face classes. So yes, the positivity rate was high, and the best way to mitigate it on our campus in this environment was to make it as safe as possible for folks. Again, if we make an exception for one person, if we say to one person, okay, you do what you're comfortable with, then we have to do that with the next person and with the next person. And it's just, there's no equitable way to do that, because then it becomes a, well, why does this person have to come to campus and this person doesn't have to come to campus? And so, you know, no one was hired to teach at our college 100% online. Everyone was hired to teach here. We have had a tremendous shift in the balance between online and face-to-face. We've put health and safety protocols into place. We've done everything we can to mitigate, but we can't make exceptions for one employee group. We can't make exceptions for one individual because it's a slippery slope. And I know that's hard. So this is one of the hardest parts about leadership. It would be great if I could say, yes, absolutely, we can do that. I can't do that, because then it becomes, then we become a place of exceptions, and we just can't do that, unfortunately. Okay, it is 11 o'clock, and I want to thank everyone for coming here. And I want to reiterate, I do take the vote of no confidence seriously. I am concerned about it, and I do want there to be a positive relationship between the faculty and me and my executive team, and I'm absolutely dedicated to doing that. I don't think a vote of no confidence is the way to start that dialogue. A vote of no confidence is usually used as an instrument of last resort. And so I really encourage folks that, you know, you have my commitment for me to be here as your president, working with you, and I would appreciate the opportunity to do that in a positive way going forward. And Professor Brown, again, I would be happy to do these forums once a month. Going into the fall, I thought my office hours would accomplish this kind of thing, but clearly they haven't. So this is what we can do going forward. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.